So why are we here today? Well, given there's a lot of people joining us, I think it's fair to say there's a fair interest on the future of rural development, local development, smart local development. We have only yesterday there was a very well-attended discussion with on the future of the EU budget in next door from where we are based in Brussels, ADL. And there is a proposal on the future of the EU budget in July, which everybody is paying a lot of attention. And there's a considerable interest on that. We have recently the Vision for Agricultural Food, in addition to the draft consultation on the future of the EU budget. So therefore, there is significant interest into try to understand how it's going to be the future for EU rural areas and the EU support for that. And for that, and I guess a great testimony of the interest of this topic, we'll not only have two officials that will be that are actually in the middle of preparing the future of policies for local development in Europe, but also we have a number of key organizations, starting with the president of AEIDL, Marta Marcis, who will speak in a moment, but also the vice president of ELARD, the president of Prepare, and the coordinator of ERCA, which are well-known regional, rural networks from all over Europe. And then we'll also have a discussion on with key MEPs, European Social Committee members, and Committee of the Regions / European Rural Pact. So that means that we have a rich discussion. The point of today is precisely to have a discussion with a wider audience to the items we discussed in the FUTURAL Rural Innovation Forum, which was organized last week. And there was like a number of discussions that will be a number of recommendations, initial ideas for the future of rural areas that my colleague and project manager of FUTURAL, Carlos Strange, will present later on. As I say, and before we give the floor to the president of AEIDL, Marta Marcis, I would just say that we have 200 confirmed participants. If you see in the slide, there's going to be a fair spread of all across Europe, more or less proportional to population of various countries, but we also have 11% of people who are not from the European Union. That is, that means that what we're discussing in Europe is of interest for a wider constituency well beyond the EU member states. We have a variety of fair representation from civil society, academic experts, policy makers, institutions, rural networks, but also local communities themselves. And that's something that it is quite good that we have such a wide spread, because that will help at the richness of the discussions. But I would not like to speak too much more of your time. I would just like to start with to give the floor to Marta Marcis, the president of AEIDL. AEIDL has been working on its own as well, in addition to the various projects we facilitate on the future of local development. And she will try to frame a bit of the questions that we'll hopefully consider later on in the day. So without further ado, Marta, the floor is yours.
So good morning. In some countries, it's really early morning. So welcome. I'm the president of AEIDL, Marta Marcis. Like many of you, AEIDL is worried about the future. And like many of you, we have submitted our views to the recent consultation on the next EU budget. The AEIDL board has submitted a statement entitled "The Place of the Local Level in the European Project that Faces New Challenges." The dramatic changes of recent years and months, the trade war, the war in Ukraine, the information Cold War, and many other things are bringing new challenges to the European project. We believe that it's an era such drastic negative changes common Europe is needed more than ever. So we need Europe more than ever. Citizens' commitment to European values and project will be critical to overcome all these challenges. We at AEIDL have a long history. We are more than 35 years old organization. We are dealing with territorial development and innovative local projects. Last December, we organized a co-creation workshop on the future of the European project at the local level for the next 10 years. This co-creation workshop was organized with participation of the General Assembly members of AEIDL and who represent 18 countries and our team members. And the result of the common thinking is clear. There will be a key role for the local level to play in the next 10 years. AEIDL emphasizes the importance of a bottom-up approach to support the European project and values. We need the bottom-up approach. Like many of you, we fear for the centralization at the EU and national level of the post-2027 EU funds and programs. AEIDL is advocating for greater empowerment of local actors in relevant to the partnership principle and the pooling of resources at the local level, involving local actors intensively in decision-making to strengthen the democratic process. Like many of you, we stress the relevance of the leader CLLD approach and its integration into various EU policies, in different policies. It's not only one sector. However, EU-funded local development initiatives need technical support, capacity building, transnational networking, and significant funding. In this context, AEIDL warns against the persistence of silo politics and the need for integrated solutions. The role of local empowerment is crucial in addressing the geographic of this content, and the right to stay must be ensured where people feel at home. In today's meeting, we will hear emerging findings from the future project, discuss with all our speakers policy needs, gaps, and recommendations to the next rural development programs of the EU. And most importantly, we continue bringing together a community of stakeholders, practitioners, and policymakers for smart, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive local communities. Word by word, we believe these things. And one emotional comment, if the darkness is growing, we know we need more and more light. So don't give up. Thank you. After this statement, I would like to give the floor back to Serafim Pazas-Vidal and Carla Rostrangio, who will facilitate contributions of the following speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. And I think since we need more light, I think Carla is in a good position to bring us some light because she was organizing an intense session last week on the FUTURAL Rural Innovation Forum. She's the project manager and expert for AEIDL on FUTURAL. And there's a number of policy findings that she's been working intensely for the last few months, actually the last year or so, which were discussed and co-produced with the project members last week. So without further ado, Carla, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for this introduction, and thanks also to Marta indeed for this warming starts, let's say. Let me share the good screen, just a moment. Yes. Okay, yeah, here we are. So indeed, good morning. And today I'm going to go through some of the early findings from our FUTURAL project. So these are some policy findings on community-led innovation in rural areas. And within the framework of the project, basically, we looked at how current policies and governance mechanisms, they are supporting community-led innovation in rural areas. And before going more into some of the results, I would like to stress the reason why we are discussing about community-led innovation in rural areas. So those innovations which are led by communities. And the first point I would like to make is that communities are forced to innovate in rural areas due to necessity. So innovation is mainly necessity pulled in order to address and tackle economic, social, demographic, and other challenges. And these innovations span across several sectors, which are strategic sectors and high added value sectors, such as energy communities, community-based care, for instance, digital innovation, climate transition, which are all relevant for achieving Europe's goals and objectives, as well we have been seeing through COVID, but also through the Ukrainian war and so on and so forth. And also community-led rural innovation, it has a strong public interest because it fills the gaps which are left by the public sector and by the private, so the market, which because of remoteness or lack of financial viability, they are unable, let's say, to bring solution. And by doing so, it delivers goods and services which are of interest for rural areas, but also behind rural areas because they serve communities such as urban communities moving to rural areas for different reasons or other communities. And by saying so, we might be tempted to say that perhaps community-led rural innovation might be seen as a form of European public goods because it enables among communities to pursue this right to stay in rural areas and also address the geography of discontent. So this is just to give an early start, but more on what we did. So our policy analysis is really aimed at assessing what are the existing policies and governance mechanisms which are supporting community-led rural innovation. And by doing so, the question we ask were, what are the existing policies? Are they able to help communities in the design, development, implementation of innovative solutions, and in which ways? And what are some of the best practices? What are some of the gaps? So we did research at European and through some case study countries at national level. We did some qualitative data collection, and overall about 39 stakeholders were interviewed from local to European level. And these ended into our final analysis and policy recommendations, which were validated together with the FUTURAL partners and other rural networks such as well ERCA and Prepare, which are represented today within this webinar. The analysis is not published yet, but it's going to be so very soon. So stay tuned to learn more. So what did we discover? At European level, we could actually perform quite of an extensive and large mapping of existing policy frameworks, measure programs, and governance framework, which are impacting community-led rural innovation. And perhaps this is one of the most extensive because we went down to hundreds in between policy and governance framework. And here you see represented some figures. When it comes to policy framework, we really went to detail to listing them, but also indicated which are indeed which are responsible for them, the type of instruments, so whether this is more providing technical support, financial or legislative support to community-led innovation, and the type of innovation is exactly tackled. Is it social innovation? Is it digital innovation? Is there a focus on community-led innovation? And is there a focus on rural development, or is it broadly speaking about, for instance, digital innovation, but no specific mention on community development? And also, we look into governance mechanisms which exist to strengthen rural innovation. And this goes from rules and processes to frameworks for cooperation, to working groups and networks. And why did we decide to also take into the consideration this governance element? Is because, these governance mechanisms allow rural innovation initiatives to connect with each other, to learn from best practices, but also to input with feedback the policy process. So they are all very valuable. And what did we find? Found out that the leader, in fact, remained the main tool to support community-led innovation in rural areas. So here you see some figures on the current budget. So for this programming period, which is equivalent to 5 billion euros, and overall member states, they allocate above the minimum earmarking of 5%. So the current allocation are 7.7. LEADER supports currently more than 2,500 local action groups. So we can say that it's somehow a success, considering that at the very beginning, this was about 200 LAGs, which were supported in 1901. And it covers approximately 65% of the rural population. So it's quite large, the support it provides. Of course, when we consider LEADER and the respective tool and instrument in the cohesion policy, which is the CLLD, we see what is perhaps striking the most is the difference in terms of budget size. So though CLLD is as important as LEADER, overall 750 million are planned through CLLD via ERDF and ESF Plus, and these are equally split in fact in between rural and urban areas. So it's really striking the difference in terms of budget, and perhaps one of the reasons is that there is not a minimum here marking linked to CLLD within the cohesion policy. Another third main and very much relevant instrument which has been introduced within the current programming period are the smart villages. They specifically target innovation within the framework of rural areas. And here you see some figures on within the current CAP strategic plans, how many smart villages in between project strategies are being foreseen by member state, which is about 2,500, so it's pretty important. But then when we look down within CAP strategic plans on how smart villages have been planned, we see that these have been mainly uptaken within the LEADER intervention. Only a few CAP strategic plans, so within 5 member states, they decided to design specific smart villages interventions, and about 6 CAP strategic plans, they define more than one rural development intervention which somehow mention or foresee support to smart villages. And last point on the EU-level support to community-led innovation in rural areas, which we would like to make, is that behind these tools and these policies, which are very, very important, there are way more framework and policies which support community-led innovation or can be supported to that within, the framework of rural areas, such as the Horizon Europe program, or of course, the EU long-term vision for rural areas. And I'm sure that Alexia from DG Agri is going to be going through more in depth about that. But also other less obvious programs which might not definitely coming to our mind easily, such as the Social Economy Action Plan or the new European House, that to a certain extent and differently, they might be used by rural communities to indeed finance or community-led innovation in one way or another, being it more like the actual development or the strategic development or more capacity building. And then we looked also at national level. So we picked up 6 specific countries, which are the FUTURAL countries, which are Austria, Belgium, Spain, Greece, Lithuania, and Romania. And we performed more in-depth analysis on how those countries, they foresaw some support to rural innovation. And then we try to look more specifically on community-led innovation. We look within CAP strategic plan, cohesion policy operational programs, in particular ERDF, ESF Plus at national level, and to a certain extent we try to look within the regional OPs and other policy and policy instruments. And what we found out is basically that there are within CAP strategic plans, we see strong differences in key indicators across countries and very large differences on how intervention are planned. When it comes to leader funding, 5 out of 6 countries, they go above the 5% mandatory marking. We have a very good example from Spain, which established on 10% of funds allocated to leader. Smart villages uptake is very diverse, and only Lithuania and Spain, they somehow clear, what is smart villages according to a specific definition, and they provide quite well-defined budget and result indicators, why is not so by other member states. Within our analysis. And then overall, when it comes to indicator, we see quite strong differences. So we try to select some relevant indicators, such as on digitalization, agriculture, on EIP group projects. And we see that differences, they are not just very strong from one to another side of Europe, so across member states, but sometimes even within the same member states. And here we see within the result indicator on digitalization in agriculture, how, for instance, the percentage percentage of farms which will support, are expected to receive support for digital farming technology might go from 80% in Flanders, which is within Belgium, to less than 1% in Wallonia, which is still within Belgium, or for instance, Romania. So quite interesting to look at those numbers. When we look at the cohesion policy operational programs, we see very few CLLD instruments being used by selected countries, and as well, I underline that we mostly operate analysis at national level, with an exemption coming from Austria, and I will present their case coming soon. And other exemption, but I would say that the main key message to retain here is that innovation is targeted within operational programs, but is mostly not directly and explicitly targeting rural areas. So innovation is looked more broadly, but not the rural innovation element or the community-led element is somehow missing. And then when we looked at national policy or policy instruments, well, there are mostly no national strategies on community-led innovation or rural innovation specifically. This is somehow not surprising, but is an important stock-taking on this side. And we see some different practices which are going to present in a minute, which could be enlightening perhaps on how the future policy might try to strengthen this dimension of communities being involved in innovation within rural areas. And I'm going to go through some examples because I think that's the easiest way to be brought to a same narrative and to see how things might be shaping in the future. And the first one, going back to the CAP strategic plan of Lithuania. So within the countries we analyze, Lithuania is the only one who defined a dedicated smart village intervention with clear budgets and with clear numbers, why it was actually not the case. So basically it established a budget overall 600,000 euros per strategy. It decided to finance overall 25 smart rural strategies. What are those strategies? Are strategies that should address rural challenges and inequalities, producing clear and measurable change at local level. Beneficiaries, they have to include the leader lags, so rely on existing partnership and including possibly other actors. But what is perhaps important to retain and to underline in that strategies might take place in rural areas which are not covered by the leader perimeter, so going behind that. Another example that I would like to move on comes from the national ERDF operational programs of Austria. They defined this intervention, which is more regions using CLLD. So this intervention was based basically on the upscaling of CLLD in the previous programming period in 2014-2020. So they found out that CLLD applied within the South Tyrol region was quite successful, and so decided to uptake this in the existing programming periods. And the objective of this measure is to promote more integrated territorial development, so to overcome competitive thinking across many small-scale municipalities and try to develop a coordinated approach over three thematic areas: urban-rural linkages, climate change, and a third thematic area is around innovation-oriented economic and local development. So they define something less than 7 million euros for this measure, and here you see some of the targets which are quite large in terms of people benefiting from this measure and people involved overall within the process. A third example comes from Interreg, so cross-border program between Italy and Austria in the current programming periods. This cross-border program has also a tradition around CLLD, and it claims to be the first pioneering financing program to a CLLD since 2014. So over the last programming period, they already financed 200 projects through CLLD for an equivalent of 11 plus 2 million euro. And they decided to keep this, to keep doing this within the current programming period through mainly 4 projects, which are the Terra Reatica, Viptal, Dolomiti Live, and Euro Open. And through those projects, basically, they finance a number of small to medium-sized projects. So they basically deliver in between 50,000 and 200,000 euro per project. And those projects have to fit within the cross-border strategy of the overall program. Those project finance, they cover a number of thematic areas, including smart villages. So this is as well an interesting case to perhaps look at on how CLLD can be used through cross-border or interreg programs, even in the future and the next programming period. And my last example comes more from a national case, which are the DG banks in Belgium. So this is an initiative coming from the Flemish government, and it tried to tackle, if not directly innovations or digital innovation in this case of communities, but more digital competencies that stay before digital innovation comes in. And the exact aim is to reduce this digital divide and support digitally, in particular, more marginal groups of the population. And how do they do so? They basically divide and finance a number of DG banks, so basically are DG points across 200 municipalities, and you see here they are quite widespread. And to each DG points, they give a certain budget in between 350,000 and 500,000 euro per bank, and those are run by local map partnership, which might include local authorities, but also civil society organization, social economic companies, and trainers. So it's quite interesting case as well of how to develop a large partnership and across the country to foster digital competencies. And my almost final slide to end up. So these were some of our findings and our reflection, which perhaps can bring food for thought for the coming speakers as well. But key takeaways that comes from the overall policy analysis is that overall the cohesion policy has a very important role. It's overall allocates more funds to rural development behind farming than the CAP Pillar 2 itself. However, LEADER is by far the most relevant instrument to finance community-led innovation, despite some limitation that we are aware of and that were said and that are reported by local actors themselves and being further deepened within our analysis. But I think that it's important to be aware of this asymmetry and recognize also, the very important role of LEADER, which perhaps can be further expanded within CLLD in cohesion policy. Smart villages offer a very targeted approach to community-led innovation in rural areas, and this is possible within both CAP and cohesion policies by existing legislation. But overall, we see that the uptake is limited as well as budgetary allocation, and there is an overall reluctancy of defining clear goals and clear indicators. So the member states need to be further strengthened and encouraged to do so. Third point is that behind the CAP and the cohesion policies, there are a number of sector and national policies which are very valuable in order to diversify funds to community-led rural innovation. And these are, for instance, digital or social policies, industrial policies, and so on and so forth. However, what we see is that those policies are mostly especially blind. They do not target specifically rural areas. They are sometimes and often less accessible to local initiatives because either they define support like funds which are too large or too complex or too hard to be accessed to these communities. And overall, we see often a misalignment of those wider policies with rural development. And there are many cases on how industrial policies are not fully aligned with rural development, or how smart specialization strategies are often not fully aligned to rural development policies. And within this, perhaps also there is more space to make the competitive compass more aligned to rural development strategies. When it comes to governance, it's very important to see that rural innovation is influenced not only by policies occurring at European level, but member states have much to say on all of those policies which regard, for instance, industrial policies or digital innovation and so on and so forth. And overall, the European funding treaties, they are supportive to community-led innovation and rural innovation in large and rural areas through a number of articles or tools. But in practice, sometimes those tools are a bit too hard to be accessed by communities themselves. It's quite hard to be involved in the policy process for communities. So this is a barrier to make communities being heard and the voice to be heard within the current policy cycle. Also, we observed that the national space, it's very hard for local authority and civil society networks to be involved because they are increasingly financially constrained. So there is actually an imbalance between local duties and municipal sides, as well as a lot of geopolitical instability. And this comes to my last point. The major barriers come indeed from financial resources. Sometimes the community are under-resourced at different level, and together with them local authorities. And another main barrier comes from technical capacities. And in all of this, excessive bureaucracy and rigid regulation is not simplifying the tools. So several stakeholders called for more flexible regulation in certain things, such as innovation, public procurement, and so on. And so this is my contribution to today. Hope there are going to be some questions later on. Just to tell you that this policy analysis was prepared within the framework of an Horizon Europe project, which focus on smart innovation in rural areas, which goes beyond digital innovation, but also includes social and business innovation. And the project focused not just on policy analysis, but on actually implementing a number of smart solutions across rural areas in Europe. So I invite you to learn more about the project by looking at the website, perhaps after the conference. And with this, I thank you, and I give the floor back to Serafin.
Thank you very much. As Carla said, this very comprehensive study, it was essentially taking a number of countries, which represents a great variety of within Europe. It doesn't tell the whole story, it just tells a number of patterns, and then we complemented that with analysis at the European level. So it's a multi-level analysis, not as comprehensive as covering the whole of Europe, but I think it clearly identifies a number of patterns of variation, but also patterns of consistency in terms of the policy landscape. But now we move on to, and we will have a discussion, be able to have a bit of a discussion on that later on, so no worries, but just to provide a complete picture. Now we are glad to have two officials from the European Commission, Alexia Ruby from DG Agri, Antos Rak, who will speak later from DG Regio. As I was telling them earlier, I'm very grateful that they could join us. It's not an easy time for EU officials who are in the middle of preparing the next Multiannual Financial Framework and what it means for local development. So we're going to hear some reflections first, to the extent it is possible at this stage, of course, from Alexia Ruby, who's well known to many of us working on local development. She's been instrumental in the Agri for the developing a long-term vision for EU rural areas, the EU Rural Action Plan, and the Rural Pact. So I'm sure that has so interesting things to share with us today. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Alexia.
Thank you very much, Serafin. Thank you to FUTURAL and AEIDL for the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to try and share my screen. Yes, it's all right?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for the presentation that has just been, beautiful presentation by Carla, going into a number of very important topics. If I were you, I would expect already answers from us on these things, but as you know, we're at the moment of the policy cycle where we're still building the proposals for July, as Serafin rightly explained, and so there are a number of things we don't know yet first, and we're not in a position to say what the things are going to be in the future. What I can tell you is that we are making every effort that is possible at our respective levels to promote these issues within the process. So my plan was first to quickly remind what are the specifics of rural innovation, then explain what we have done under the EU Rural Action Plan before talking about the future and handing over to my colleague Anton Schrack, who will give also details about a number of the initiatives in which I would not enter. If it agrees to move, okay. Yeah. So what is special about rural innovation? From the analysis we conducted to develop the long-term vision for rural areas back in 2020, and a number of things that Carla has said already, we highlighted a number of aspects that are related to the rural economy. So we are looking at areas with smaller businesses, a lower density of people and businesses, greater distance to markets, to universities and research centers, more difficult access to skilled labor, in particular, university skills, digital skills, more difficult access to services and infrastructure, both digital and physical. We have also a number of pros of opportunities on which which are potential on which we can build. So easier access to space, lower rents for companies, but also for their workers. Easier access to energy, natural resources, natural amenities, which is important for quality of life, and strong community spirit, culture, heritage, sense of belonging that can also be the source of innovation, especially on the social front. So what types of innovation, what does that mean for the types of innovation we have? We have innovation indeed, like Carla said, which is sparked by challenges to solve or new ideas on how to use resources or tacit knowledge, rather than only through R&I. R&I is very important, but it doesn't come only from that. It comes mostly from problems that you have to solve. We have a number of sectors that are very important for rural economies, like agri-food is one, of course, but there's a lot of potential right now in the green economy, the green transition, energy, also the silver economy, as these areas are aging more rapidly, tourism, culture, where Europe as a destination is developing as a priority, and services, as rightly explained before, as the public sector tends to withdraw, there's a space for innovation to come in. We have multiple forms of innovation. Technological is there, but also social, business, product, organizational. And this innovation is not always patented, or maybe less patented than more urban forms of innovation. And it means that innovation is less captured in statistics, in metrics. And this is something we need to pay attention to as well, because we tend to underestimate, basically. Cooperation and networks are vital to partner, to create critical mass between the smaller actors, and to access knowledge and tech outside of the region as well. And finally, the territorial dimension is very important, quite central to the webinar today, but indeed we have lots of potential for place-based innovations involving multiple actors rather than one company, one sector type of innovation. So this has been captured in the long-term vision for the EU's rural areas that we published in 2021, which is the Commission's document really mapping where we want to go and then the place of rural areas in the European project. So we brought together the aspirations of Europeans to have stronger, connected, resilient, and prosperous rural areas by 2040. The innovation element is mostly captured under the stronger part. We need communities that can invent new solutions to the challenges they face. And the competitiveness is more under the prosperous, the diversified, prosperous economy providing good jobs. But these two aspects are very important across the 4 areas of actions of the long-term vision for all areas. As you know, we have 3 main vehicles to go towards these shared goals by 2040. One in the Rural Action Plan, which is a series of 30 actions across European Commission departments to act for rural areas. We have the Rural Pact, which is beyond the Commission, bringing all the levels of governance to work together towards these goals, as it's really a shared, it has to be a shared endeavor, and our EU policies, which are there to provide funding to act. So among the 24 thematic actions within the Rural Action Plan, I highlighted there some with green circles and some with yellow circles. The green ones are where the instruments that we have used in priority to support rural innovation projects. And the yellow ones are equally important. They are to strengthen the enablers for this innovation to be able to happen. So projects, that we have in particular 3 actions: the flagship for research and innovation for rural communities. Then we have support to leader in smart villages, very well highlighted in the previous presentation. And we also have the flagship on entrepreneurship and the social economy led by DG Grow, where we are funding also consortia and social economy in rural areas, transition pathways, where there's a lot of social innovation happening, and they're there as well. And enablers, we are working through the Rural Action Plan on improving mobility, but digital is very important. So more than 23 billion invested in connectivity and in market failure areas, so in white and gray areas where connectivity is lower, investing in digital skills, trying to bring more rural young people to Erasmus and improving the content available in rural schools. So, skills is a very important component of innovation. So through Horizon Europe, because it's been less detailed maybe by Carla, I'd like to highlight that we have invested over 250 million euros, and these are the figures from last year, so probably we can we need to update them for this year as well, in over projects with a direct interest and focus on rural areas and communities under this flagship under Horizon Europe. And many of them are, or most of them are multi-actor, which means we try for this project to be benefiting local actors and communities also during the project itself, asking for a cooperative approach, working with local labs or groups or multi-actor, depends on the forms that the project choose to use, but some anchoring of this project on the ground, and where researchers and these local groups work together to achieve results and find solutions to problems that they face, and integrating these local groups in broader networks from which they can benefit in the future as well. So you can see here, if you relate to the specifics of rural innovation that I talked about in the beginning, that we are really tailoring these instruments to this. And FUTURAL is one of the projects funded under this, this flagship. We're also supporting rural innovation through the European Innovation Partnership on Agricultural Productivity and Sustainability. Although this has a strong focus on agriculture due to its creation in the beginning, it has been opened under this period to all the objectives of the CAP, including development of rural communities. The uptake of this needs to increase, but it's possible already, and we intend to keep it that way. And we can see very nice practices of EIP rural being emerging in some countries. We support knowledge exchange, better advice for innovators, networking activity through the EUCAP network, and this is really a very relevant instrument also. I have said that we failed to capture well rural innovation. Well, there's a good news is that there's a new preparatory action undertaken by the Joint Research Center to improve the understanding of rural innovation and entrepreneurship in connection with the European Startup Village Forum, which is also part of the flagship on R&I in the Rural Action Plan. So they're working on improving metrics and indicators through including producing new primary data. They're involved in 5 different studies on patterns, drivers, and obstacles to rural innovation, and they're continuing to engage with EU rural territories on these aspects. So we hope to get a better understanding, a better picture, and better visibility for these things in the future. Carla has talked a lot about the CAP. I have even less details than this here, so I'm not going to dwell too long, but just to say that in the CAP plans, indeed, the need to support business development and cooperation is clearly identified, and we are addressing this through 3 types of instruments. You have detailed what's being done under cooperation with leaders, smart villages, and EIP agri-operational groups, but we also have investments, which is actually the bigger amount of money, 15 billion euros under the CAP plans, are directly benefiting rural areas, and infrastructure investments and non-productive investments, which are also really important for these enabling conditions. So we need to make sure this remains as well, this capacity of rural communities to access this investment support. And we also have a bit of a startup aid for startups in rural areas, not picked up very much, but picked up by 8 member states. And this is an interesting example too. So if we look into the future, I believe there's a quite favorable policy landscape in terms of thematics. If we look at innovation, competitiveness, and rural areas in the political priorities for this new mandate of the Commission 24 to 29, prosperity and competitiveness is the top priority, with a clean industrial deal, decarbonization, energy union, research and innovation. Of course, the challenge will be that we manage to come up with a framework where rural communities can benefit from this. The priority on supporting people and the social model is very important also for rural areas, a just transition for all. And this is where we say we need to address regional and social disparities and ensuring the right to stay, which is a strong concept in this new mandate. And sustaining our quality of life includes the vision for agriculture and food, climate adaptation, and crisis preparedness, which is also important, and that has references to rural areas. And this is echoed in the communication on the road to the next multi-annual financial framework, which says that the success of the single market hinges on the ability to benefit all European citizens and businesses. So we need to reduce disparities, invest and unlock the barriers to development. And it also says a CAP that is fit for purpose must support the right conditions for thriving rural areas. I know I'm over time, but I will just quickly go into this vision for agriculture and food that was adopted in February 25. This is the guiding document for the next CAP. It aims at an attractive, competitive and resilient, sustainable and fair agri-food sector by 2040. And you can see there as well that competitiveness and fairness are very relevant to our discussion today. And it's important that we have the recognition there of the interplay between agriculture and rural, that we need to ensure living conditions and vibrant and well-connected rural and coastal areas as a really a condition for a thriving agricultural sector, and as part of our European way of life. This is captured in the vision very well, and we have a number of actions that are taken in the framework of this vision for agriculture and food. Very importantly, it takes forward the main lines of actions of the long-term vision for rural areas. So we go on. It says that we need to improve synergies and complementarities for these communities, that we need to update the rural action plan. So we're working on updating the rural action plan this year. Probably we will adopt only early next year. There's a commitment to strengthen the Rural Pact, which is important to build this integrated approach, this multi-level governance approach that you talked about. It says we need to strengthen participatory local development tools and other forms of cooperation like smart villages. It's written black on white. And that we need to further operationalize the rural proofing principle, where we come with the need to adapt all these other policies to rural needs, as you said. There's also a commitment to update the strategic approach to research and innovation for agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. So that's important. And there on the competitiveness angle, we have a number of actions. I'm not going to detail because I'm over time, but this is mostly for the agri-food sector, but there's the competitiveness of the agri-food sector, which is also very important for rural economy, is there with a number of actions. So on these things, we are active as well. So for the rural action plan, very interested to hear about your ideas. We just heard as well. So, but just to let you know, we're listening and we're taking up your suggestions that can feed into this new version of the action plan on which we're working. And under the Rural Pact, this is a very big subject as well. So tomorrow, actually, we have a Rural Pact Good Practice webinar on rural innovation, where a lot of very interesting examples will be showcased. If you're not registered, the recordings will be available shortly, so you will be able to listen if you want. And we will have a discussion at the big Rural Pact conference that we have on 16-17 September with a session on boosting innovative and competitive rural economies and businesses. And we also have a session on participatory local development at that conference. There too, we're overbooked, registrations are closed. But it will be streamed, and we welcome any inputs into the discussion that we can receive before, in case you are not able to join us there. And thank you very much. Serafin, over to you.
Thank you, Alexia. As you can see, we start gloomy and it's becoming positive as the meeting goes along. So thank you for providing that level of detail. And as I mentioned, we precisely organized this meeting today because there's a more detail. This is a very policy meeting. Tomorrow is more best practice meeting that is organized by our colleagues from the Rural Pact. And you should see this as part of a coordinated effort to try to bring this agenda forward to a wider audience. So we have like a lot of the contribution from the EAGRI, from the long-term vision of rural areas, but long-term vision of rural areas and the future rural areas is also the responsibility of cohesion policy. And therefore, we're going to have also the reflections of Antos Rack from the REGIO, the unit dealing with cities, communities, and people, that I believe will have a big role into conceptualizing the role of local development as it has been in previous periods, the role of local development in cohesion policy. So without further ado, Anton, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will not have a PowerPoint presentation, so you will have to listen to me. Now, I'm working for almost 30 years now on regional development in DG Regio, and DG Regio is not only DG Regio, it's also DG Regio and Urban Affairs. So you could imagine we are not dealing with rural areas, which is not true from our name. Because we are very well aware that our policy is covering the whole of the EU, all the member states, all the territories in the member states, and we are not stopping at city borders. So we know that rural areas cover 80% of the EU territory, and they are home to 30% of the EU's population. So we cannot say competitiveness is only an issue for urban areas. There's no competitiveness without the peripheral and rural areas. So when we look then closer at the economic picture of the rural areas, we see that even if they are called rural, only 4% of the total value added created in these regions is only 4% comes from agriculture and fisheries and forestry. Whereas 30% in these areas of the GDP comes from industry and construction, which is even higher than in urban regions. So for us, it shows that rural areas have already an economic diversification and a high potential. So we also see that there are some challenges which are common for all regions, and they are more acute in some. So it's skill shortages in digital and green skills in particular, digital connectivity and physical connectivity is underdeveloped. There's an underinvestment in research and innovation infrastructure, and definitely there's a demographic decline in most regions or around cities, not in all. We know, for example, in Austria, it's exactly inverse. So the Commission has in January presented the outline of its competitiveness compass, which will be based on 3 pillars and is to be implemented over the coming years. The background is the 2 reports by the Mr. Letter and Draghi, which very clearly describes that the EU as a whole is in trouble. We are not innovative enough. We are not living up to what we could be, what we could do in the global race for being the most competitive and innovative place for our citizens. We have the potential, but we are not using it. And the most striking figure I found is that only 5% of all the startups globally are based in Europe, but we produce 17% of the global GDP. And we have enormous financial resources in Europe, in particular if we take into account also private savings, but we don't use them correctly. So the competitiveness compass aims at changing that situation. And I'll go through the 3 pillars very quickly. So the first pillar is called innovation. And the compass says that our main problem is that we are not productive enough. Our productivity is low compared to the US and some Asian nations. So why is it like this? We don't have enough disruptive innovation. And we don't diffuse our new technologies in traditional sectors like agriculture and the bioeconomy. So already now we have some first steps in remedying this situation. A new startup and scale-up strategy has been developed with the aim of reducing regulatory and capital barriers, also for rural entrepreneurs and innovators. It was firstly published in January, and public consultation followed until the end of March, and now we plan as the EU at the end of this month to publish it with taking into account what came out from the public consultations with around 1,000 contributions, and most of these, from what I could see, were related to cutting red tape and ease access to finance. Then there is a proposal to have an European Innovation Act, which would expand the access to research and technology infrastructure, and to have a kind of testing ground for new ideas. We have also the European Research Area Act, aligning research investments with strategic priorities like advanced materials, biotech, and robotics. And we have the bioeconomy and biotech strategies under preparation, which shall address the market and regulatory barriers and promote bio-based industries, which are vital for rural economies. So what is common to all these strategies, they are not anymore project-based, but they want to achieve a reform of the systems and build ecosystems. The pillars 2 and 3 are dealing with decarbonization and resilience. The vision for agriculture and food has been mentioned already. Then we have the climate adaptation plan, and affordable energy is a key element here, and it's also relevant for rural areas. And we have the European Economic Security Strategy, also aiming at higher resilience of rural areas. And these rural areas, they are the contributors of land, of water, of ecosystems. There will be critical actors in all of these strategies. They are the owners of the renewable energy possibilities. They have a chance with climate smart agriculture and with biodiversity preservation. And all of this should be for the good of the whole of the EU. But we are aware that no strategy will be better than the paper if there is no link with the people doing it. So we have to look at governance and at the appropriate investments. And several enabling initiatives are under preparation. It's a union of skills. It should be tackling the talent shortages via reskilling, mobility, and education to labor alignment. We have a competitiveness coordination tool which should facilitate the coordinated investment between EU and the member states. And very important, we will have the competitiveness fund under preparation, which is aimed at simplifying access to finance for innovative and transformative projects. The details are still under elaboration, but it could be a game changer for all innovators, also in rural areas. Just to complement the previous presentations, where the leader approach was rightly praised as very successful with good reasoning why it was so successful, and it also pointed to the CLLD, which was less substantial. I would like to add that our regulation for 21-27 also gave other possibilities of local action, and in particular the ITIs, Integrated Territorial Initiatives, which in some member states basically cover the whole territory. They do not have an allocation as such. We have an allocation for the sustainable urban development of 8%, and many of these sustainable urban development investments are done in the form of ITIs. Not all of these are only for urban areas. Some of them also cover the functional area around the cities. So the figures of local involvement also under ERDF and Cohesion Fund and ESF Plus are in the end much higher, but we don't have a concrete figure of how much it benefits rural areas. Now, a short word to the next Multiannual Financial Framework. Yesterday, our president gave a little insight in what is planned for July. I cannot preempt what will be proposed in July, but it's very clear that we will have a budget which is different from the past. The idea is confirmed that there should be a plan for each country, linking reforms and investments, and it should be designed in partnership between the national levels, the regional levels, the local authorities, and on the other hand, the European level. One part of the budget certainly will go to the European Competitiveness Fund, but our president assured that there will be a special place for cohesion and for farmers as well as and also for support to research and investment. The discussion on the MFF is a very hot one. It goes beyond our scope here in this meeting. But let's not forget that we are not only talking about the post-27 period. We also have a proposal for revising the ongoing financial framework, because the Commission in February proposed to have a midterm review of the Multiannual Financial Framework, with a substantial revision of what can be the subject of investments. For example, now larger companies, if they are innovative, can come in. Research and defense have more prominence. So in total, it will give the program authorities more flexibility in where to invest and to increase the support to innovation and resilience. And in particular for the eastern border region, this foresees very, very favorable conditions. Now, this proposal is with the budget authorities, and if everything goes well, by summer break, we will have a decision on this, which will also benefit a lot of the clients which are based in rural areas. I hope we are now back in time, and back to you, Serafin.
Thank you very much. And that's very helpful because it provides a wider perspective to the question we're discussing today. The issue of ecosystem and the integrated approaches and the various initiatives that you highlighted as provide a more comprehensive picture. And also, I think something you said at the very end. I mean, a lot of people thinking about 2028, when in reality there's still a lot of things that can be done in the current programs. Many programs in many countries are half of them committed at most, and therefore there's a possibility to significantly revise them and update them because, as President von der Leyen said yesterday in the budget conference, the situations in which the budgets were planned were different to the one we are living now, and perhaps as we have the chance, we can actually revise the existing plans without having to wait for 2028 to introduce new ideas. I'm aware of the time, so I'm just going to very quickly, before we have a debate with the various pan-European networks, I'd like just to highlight a bit of a stock take of what we had. Well, first, if anybody has a urgent question or a very strategic question to the three speakers, I think we can still accommodate that. We have so many people that I'm trying to see if there's any hands raised. Don't see the case. Well, in that case, we will have a discussion later. I thank the three speakers and certainly the two colleagues from the Commission for their contribution, and appreciating the difficulties of making a presentation in this moment, given the presentation, the preparation for the next EU budget. I will just share my screen to show some ideas, as Alexia mentioned, some of the ideas that they are welcome at the moment. If I can, and the system allows, they should be right. So I'll just give you one moment of your time. These are emerging policy recommendations taking stock of all the things we have discussed so far within the project, but also in terms of what we are understanding that the discussion is going along the way. These are, in a way, proposals, initial proposals. Some of them are small provocations, and some of them perhaps ideas to reflect further and maybe refine, perhaps even coming to a different outcome. But it's just to trying to move the agenda forward from the point of view of what we can do from AEDL, in this case from the FUTURAL project. As I mentioned, a lot of the evidence that Carla extensively discussed is based on these various other countries. There's a combination of there's 6 case studies plus a number of other organizations, technical organizations, stakeholder groups, universities, and pan-European rural networks. So this is not just AEDL or Carlo and us coming out of the office thinking about ways of making policies better. A lot of these 6 very strategic recommendations that we're going to quickly highlight, and the presidents of the pan-European networks will be able to comment on. As I say, apart from the analytical work and the case studies and interviews, was like a session on validation as part of the European Rural Innovation Forum, where 100 stakeholders from all over Europe were able to agree whether these recommendations are a good way forward for the future rural areas. Some of them will be pretty specific, and other things will be more general. Clearly, in terms of the emerging recommendations we are developing through all these partners that I mentioned earlier, is having the next policies need to have a more deeper recognition of the transformative role of community-led innovation. So in a way, building on what is already been discussed earlier today by the colleagues from the Commission. Perhaps could be an interesting point particularly for stakeholders who are going to be engaged in this discussion, to call for a 8% earmarking for territorial development across funds and the shared management. So say 8% of the national single plans, if we're going to have one, and then as Commissioner Serafin, which is not related to me, the budget commissioner, said that it could be also regional plans, but it could be 8%. Why became 8%? Because the long-term vision for rural areas report 2024 identify 8% of non-rural development, non-agricultural spending in CAP, spending in rural areas. Then in cohesion policy, we got 8% for urban areas already, on ERDF in this case. And the studies that we have examined show that there's about 48 billion euros are spending cohesion policy in rural areas. Meaning that, so as Anton mentioned, there's more data than we highlighted earlier on in terms of cohesion policy. Perhaps we could choose a call for a 8%, just to give an easy number, earmark across national plans and then the regional plans. Equally, as Carla mentioned, they need to identify and to reinforce the principle do no harm to EU cohesion. That is related to the principle of right to stay. So it's a way of operationalizing that. There's been a number of proposals that we've been working on. And that's something that we believe in terms of identifying this ecosystem approach that I mentioned is quite important. And that applies as also the principle of rural preference. So it's great that the Commission is working further on that, and some of the projects we're involved are working on that as well. And we need to tackle the issue of governance. I mean, we see such as we discussed earlier, such a great variation of how EU policies, which sometimes are done with the best intentions, but then just get complicated along the ways. So understanding the role of different policies, not just cohesion policy and agriculture, but also the governance framework is quite important. Well, actually, not important, it's essential. And that includes also capacity building and a reinforced role of capacity building that we have had at the moment. That reaches also to the local level, not just at the delivery, national or regional delivery agents, delivery bodies. As mentioned by Alexia and Anton, they need to have an ecosystem approach. Easier said than done, but definitely that's the way forward. But then, we need to make things easier for people on the ground. And this potential drive to simplification that is highlighted by Commission President can be a way of actually simplifying the many instruments that we have. The problem is that if this is not done in a way that actually people can actually make their own decisions more relevant to them, can backfire. So it very much depends how simplification goes in terms of consolidation of instruments. And that includes the inclusion of local voices in decision making. Again, the partnership principle should not be just a process. It should be part of the future policies and these national and regional single plans. And that includes including how we do the digital infrastructure, digital skills, as to make sure that communities are not just told what to do, but actually they work in the definition of what the EU policies and the national policy should do to implement the digital skills and digital inclusion. So that's part of the emerging landscape that we are looking at. I will not bother you much further with that, because I think we're going to have a moment for debate. We got a number of very senior representatives, actually the leadership of the three most active pan-European rural networks. Thank you for being with us today, because you've been reflecting on that with us, but also on your own, on the future of local development in the EU post-2027. So without further ado, Carla will facilitate this debate. Over to you, Carla.
Yeah, thanks, Serafin. And so we are going to open this roundtable on rural innovation practices. And the idea of it is to extend and hear the voices from the three founding members of the European Rural Parliament, which are with us today. So I would like to introduce Arghiro Simpri, which is Vice President of ELARD, the European Leader Association for Rural Development, and with over 20 years experience on the planning, coordination and implementation of Leader Interreg, but she also has been member of the coordinating committee of the Hellenic e-Leader network and the representative of the National Rural Network. So very happy to have you here with us today. Welcome. And then we have with us also Guoda Burukiene. So she's a president of Prepare. Prepare is a partnership for Europe, is also a very important network on rural areas. And Guoda, she has been member of the Lithuanian Parliament. She has over 20 years experience in rural development and quite broad one, really going from representing rural communities to implementing rural development programs, including LEADER. And then third, but yeah, not least, we have here with us Vanessa Haet, who is coordinator of ERCA. So ERCA is the European Rural Community Alliance, and she has also worked with rural community development over the past 35 years. So quite a long journey at all levels, like going from our own local communities in Scotland, the Scottish Highlands, to more regional, national, and international level. She's also behind the first European Rural Parliament, and she has co-created ERCA and the Rural Parliament, and she has also worked quite extensive on this. So we are very happy to have you here with us today and to comment and give us a bit of a broader understanding on the topic coming from your own perspective of the different networks you represent. So just to have a warm-up question, I would like to start by asking you whether you could name 2 major trends affecting rural innovation today and that you can observe from your own communities. Yeah, maybe giving the floor first to Argiro. You are muted. Argiro, I think you are muted.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
No
Okay. Thank you. Good morning from me also. Yes, if we have to say at least 2 major threats for the rural innovation, I could pick up the digital tools. I think the digital transformation is uneven access, so digital tools and services are growing fast, but many rural areas still lack infrastructures or digital skills. So I think this depends to the rural-urban also divide. So I can say that digitalization is important if we speak about rural innovation today. And also, I think the second threat seems to be the centralization, a top-down approach in funding and government. I think innovation is increasingly shaped by actors distant from the rural realities. So this limits local adaptability and reduces the space for bottom-up initiatives like those led by large. So we have to decrease this gap between the central and the rural areas. The threat is even bigger if, in the case of the scenario of the common pot become true from the next MFF, which means that if we speak about one big MFF, this is with no territorial and local based actors. This is going to be, I think, a big problem and a big threat for the rural innovation.
Thanks, Argiro. I would like to move the same question on trends to Gwoda, perhaps on what you see from the approach of Prepare, and perhaps indeed you can give even a broader outlook on where Prepare members are located. I think it might be helpful for the audience here in the room.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to welcome you and good day from Lithuania, because we have nearly midday already. And of course, we have a lot of problems as in all Europe. But I think that what was missed in those very informative speakers and presentations, that we have a big demographic problem. And we have aging population, and especially in rural areas. And we don't have special politics on that. And because of that, I think that many of our countries, and especially in Eastern countries, we lack specific policy for rural innovation. And every country make innovation what they are thinking that is the innovation. And as you already mentioned, there is an often poorly integrated bisectoral policy on digital and social innovation. So we have to have clearly picture what we are doing, how we can do that, and with whom we can do that. That rural areas have to be very alive, we know that it's a lot of potential in rural areas, but we have aging population and we have to focus on that if we want to have future in rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Goda. Yeah, I think that this is also was somehow related to what Anton was mentioning when the Union of Skills and how this is going to be trying to solve this, but also the European Talent Boost mechanism, which try to address demographics, but the problem and well, the issue is changing trends is quite strong all across the rural part of Europe that we can observe. So thanks for insisting that and yeah, on aligning policies. And going then to Vanessa, perhaps hearing yeah, the perspective of ERCA on these points, whether you agree with what's said before and whether you could perhaps bring another perspective coming from the membership of ERCA. I know that you have done some consultation internally before this webinar, so it's very welcome to hear those voices through you as an intermediation. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you, Carla. Yes, hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me to do this. ERCA is a network of 16, well, they're in 16 countries, organizations that are civil society focused on supporting rural communities across the board, not just in one subject area. So from that point of view, we do have a lot of experience. The issues that we came up with actually have been raised both by ELARD and Prepare already, not surprisingly. Digital transition is really critical. We are living in a digital world, as this event shows. You can't do anything these days unless you've got digital access. Many parts of the rural areas are still without digital access, and this is just unacceptable in the modern era. So, really that needs to have a lot of investment and a lot of pressure put on member state governments to really act on that. The other one is demography, and that is clear. It's been raised in all the talks so far. We do know that there is a demographic challenge within the rural areas, both young people wanting to go and live somewhere else or not wanting to live in a rural area, and older people sometimes either moving in or being left behind there. So that's a real shame, because actually the rural areas have huge opportunities. It's most of our land mass, it's most of our natural resources, it's it's an absolutely critical part of all our economies and all our opportunities. So we have to find the ways of actually getting the people there who will have the skills and will be able to actually benefit us all from those resources. The final one, which has not been raised so far, is the green transition. And the green transition seems to have got a bit lost with all of the wars that are being fought all over the world at the moment, which is really tragic, because we are in a process of massive change, climate, biodiversity, everything else, and we're trying to generate policies which are going to help that. They're both opportunities and they're also challenges for rural areas. Now, opportunity-wise, renewables are mostly taking place in rural areas, etc., etc. Equally the challenges, and in the FUTURAL project, at least one of the examples is from an area where flooding is becoming a real problem. In my own area, I'm working on another Horizon project where flooding is raised as a huge issue for rural areas. So there is a lot going on. There's both an opportunity, but there's also a big challenge for rural communities.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa, and thanks for bringing in indeed the green transition dimension, which we all observe in reality, but in fact perhaps is a bit missed out in the narrative we are constructing together, but is well, the effects are quite visible in practice. So we mentioned about demographic problem, policy misalignment, digital transitions, which is indeed shaping a lot and very relevant to the topic, green transition, and this top-down approach, so the further distancing. My next question is perhaps if you could try to identify more precisely on a few barriers and gaps which apply to rural innovation. so which makes for communities harder to innovate, and that you think should be further addressed through policies. I will call perhaps the same round as before. So going back to Argiro, if yeah.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mention before that now ELARD represents more than 3,000 LAGs and also flags of Europe, which they implement the seal of the leader approach, which is, I think it is very clear that it's, we have highlighted, we have also a very strong belief that the lack of flexibility in funding frameworks, that the LAGs face complex, rigid rules, eligibility criteria that strangle creativity and hinder innovation classroom actions. Also, capacity and research disparities between LAGs. Many LAGs struggle with human and finance resource, reducing their ability to drive innovation in their territories. Likewise, with a high turnover in large staff in some countries, innovation is hidden as training new staff is almost a constant. Also, fragmented support across policy domain. Innovation in rural areas is cross-sectoral, but LAGs often face siloed support, so social services, vice environment maybe. And also I can say that missing support for interterritorial and transnational cooperation. Cooperation is crucial for innovation. You mentioned before also. Yet, other funding, this transnational cooperation through LAGs, bureaucratical containers, and in some countries and some manager authorities do not see this in transnational cooperation as a serious endeavor. So some see this as a side seat and do not support. So they are not in all member states very supporting the innovation and the cooperation. I can, it is a good time now to mention our petition.
Argiro, I think you are muted.
Sorry.
Something happened.
We have already launched a very strong petition, and we encourage you to support this because it's very important to raise our voice about our rural areas and also about the LAGs. So, and the still DA and leader approach, which I believe that it's very important if we want to speak about innovation and governments in the rural areas. So please, it's very easy. You just go to the ELARD. I have already put this in here. So you can go and you can put your voice in this petition. Please encourage your members and all the people who today attend here to be very effective and to support the rural areas through these petitions.
Thanks, Argiro, for underlining the perspective of local action groups and flags. I think we all mentioned on how much they've grown over the last decades, but there are few like criticism and difficulties, limitation that are standing still. So it's important to highlight those so that this framework can even further grow. And in this sense, the petition and the work ELARD is doing is very much welcome on this sense on making the community and the actual policy system to grow over time and evolve. And going back to perhaps Guoda to ask you also if you could identify a few main barriers and gaps to rural innovation from your own perspective before moving to Vanessa with the same question. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. In a short, as our members of prepare is very broad skill. So we have member states, we have Armenia, for example, we have a lot of Balkan countries as our member states, and all of them mentioned the most important thing, that is bureaucracy and very tough rules for the project approach. So we have to look how to to make it easier to search for the project, to search for the innovation in rural areas, because there's a lot, not so many people with capacity doing that, and especially in not EU countries. So we have to look forward how to invite people to invest themselves in rural innovation, because we have even produced new word, inviting people, because there is not a lot of people now who would like to work as volunteers, and as I mentioned, that a lot of people who live better and better don't want to be a volunteer, and especially in rural areas, and especially if we see a lot of papers wanting to do something good, and you have to fill a lot of papers, you have to spend a lot of hours doing that, so we have to make as simply as possible if we want to have good innovative projects in rural areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Goda. And I think this has emerged also during our European Rural Innovation Forum, where it was said that sometimes there are too many tools and it's very hard for community themselves to orientate. So they actually need experts to guide them through the existing tools. And that's why we did some mapping around it. And I see some comment in the chat which are underlying that. So it's yeah, fair point to be made. And perhaps simplification can happen also in this way, on looking back at the full system of tools and looking how it can be simplified. The European Rural Toolkit act in this direction, but tools are still many, and linked to them bureaucracy. And going back to Vanessa for your view on main barriers and gaps, and where you would like policy to act upon.
Well, looking at the barriers and the gaps, I mean, the first thing that we just all need to be aware of, and I'm sure we probably are, is don't underestimate the challenges for small and often isolated rural communities, sometimes, in remote islands, in mountain areas. These are hugely difficult places to keep going. And in my experience of working for many years in this is that the more challenged the community, the more innovative and the more active they can be. But also don't underestimate the fact that most of this work is done on a voluntary basis. And, Sweden, one of our member organizations, and Sweden, their members have 5,000 village associations as their members. And these people are not being paid. These people are doing it for the love of their community, but they're not being supported in the ways that they need to. It's very easy to support governments and to support, all the institutions, but to support these local small communities that work voluntarily for their own survival should be at the forefront of our thinking. We consulted our members on this issue, and there's a number of things that came up. I'll run really quickly through one or two of them. Innovation needs to be sustainable, and so often a lot of this project funding and things is on a very short-term basis, and sustainability is very hard to achieve. Obviously the rollout of digital connectivity is, I've mentioned that already, but that came up in our survey. Capacity building is really important. It's inadequately resourced. It's often not even thought about within some of the programs. And that includes, dissemination of good practice as well as the ability to, gain new skills. The funding, of course, is always a big challenge, and particularly the funding for holistic and diverse projects. Very often there are too many specificities in the funding streams, and if you don't meet those specifics, then it's very difficult to get your project through, but your project may still be a very good project. The governance we've mentioned, and everybody's been mentioning governance, but that was an issue raised in all kinds of levels. The ability of rural communities to establish governance that will be appropriate to undertaking innovation, to work in partnerships, to work cooperatively with industry and others. And legislation, apparently conflicting legislation can also be a problem. And this was raised by our partner in the Netherlands, who mentioned legislation about nitrogen as conflicting with other things that people need to do. So a lot of these things are, sometimes they're at national level, but I think they are also things which, European Union need to be aware of. That was a quick run through, sorry.
Yeah, but that was quite complete. And I think the point here is to raise those voices, as we have a number of participants and speakers that might agree or not. So feel free, please, to add also your comment in the chat. So knowing that, I mean, all of you have been enlightening these barriers and gaps, I think that my the final round of question would be more on what are your actual recommendations to European institutions. So we have quite some speakers indeed from the European Commissions and the European Parliament. Next speaker is going to be here, Economic and Social Committee and the COR. So I think it's an important moment to hear what are your own recommendations in order to accompany more rural innovation, and in view of the midterm review and also of the next European budget. So I would then like to start from Vanessa and going back to Guoda and Argiro and give you the floors.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Well, I would just like to emphasize that both ERCA and the European Rural Parliament, which obviously we're very active in, are campaigning for a holistic and integrated approach to rural issues. In this respect, I think the launch of the long-term vision was something that we all welcomed with open arms. It's one of the most positive steps that we've seen in the EU for a very long time for rural areas. The only problem with it is that it's still under-resourced and basically lacks the powers that it's going to need to really make things happen. We've all been well aware for a long time that, as in our own member state governments, the division between, the different DGs, for instance, different responsibilities, the sectoral, responsibilities can be problematic for people on the ground, which is where you have to bring all these things together. I remember somebody once saying that, it's on the ground where people have to work out how these things get integrated. It doesn't happen in governments and it doesn't happen in the EU very often. So I think from that point of view, yes, strengthen the long-term vision and strengthen all the things that are going on within it. Look at integration. We had a midterm event in Brussels for the European Rural Parliament recently, and we conducted a survey of all our ERP members for that, and that was presented there. And one of the things that was raised was about strengthening policy and funding frameworks for rural areas, creating clear dedicated funding for rural areas, ensuring clarity in rural policies. So the question that was raised then was, do we need a dedicated rural programme and resources, which is broad spectrum? It's not agriculture focused, but it is integrating and it's broad spectrum. I think that is still a very big question mark that we need to address at the European level. We also need to look at rural research. And this is really critically important. It has to back up a lot of what we need to know and need to do. It needs to have a participative element. It needs to be accessible. The results of it need to be accessible. And, that's one of the things that is ongoing, and I'm very pleased to see that, but it probably needs to have, even more energy put into that. We also need the DGs, DG Regio, Rural Observatory, etc., to set up rural stakeholder groups, as DG Agri has, and we sit on a couple of those. It needs to be more open to people on the ground as well. So having a rural dimension, I think, within the operations of these parts of the EU are very important. And the other point is about, funding of intermediaries. Now, we are one intermediary organisation. We are civil society. All our members are civil society. On the ground, most activists are civil society. Funding intermediary organisations and people to be gatekeepers and leaders in their areas and their communities, it's extremely difficult for us to find funding. We struggle very, very strongly with these big European networks. The ERP struggles. It shouldn't have to struggle. We're doing an incredible job for the European Union. We have our next European Rural Parliament taking place in Scotland, I'm proud to say, in October. but finding the resourcing to do these things is ridiculously hard. So I think that would be a very big issue we would put forward. There's lots more, but I'll end there.
Thanks a lot, Vanessa. That's great. Same question to you, Guada. What would be your recommendations?
Thank you very much. Vanessa already mentioned a lot of things, but I have to add that we have to have a strong civil society in rural areas to bring innovation in them. And I think that we have to make rural development tools mandatory across all EU members and ensure sustained funding and support for rural movements and networks at local, national, EU levels. That is crucial for many rural participants and rural people. And I think that enlargement process and activities must be strengthened and new partnerships, structures, funding schemes developed. This would also contribute to overall security in Europe. And the last, leave no one behind. And all places, rural places and territories must be visible in programs and action as target measures. So we have to do everything that rural development must be in underlines, must be in front of underlines if we want to have active rural areas, and we have to have them very alive, because after them there is nothing. We are front in line. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Guada. And then last intervention from ELARD. I believe that you share many things on that, but would like to hear also your recommendation. And ELARD also issued his own declaration by 2024. So I believe that more can be found in there. But back to you, Argiro, to hear ELARD recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I think we have very clear recommendation for the new period. Also, already we have the ELARD declaration we have published and the petition, as I mentioned before, but I would like to highlight here the 5 of them, which I think is the most significant and the most important to highlight in this discussion today. I think we are very clear that we need to recognize LADS as a EU innovation hub, acknowledge LADS as a key actor for rural innovation and development beyond agriculture through integrated multi-sectoral strategy. As said before, they mentioned in regional policy, I think they need local governments, they need local players, so we are there. They can use and they can take the advantage of the long-time experience of the LADS in the rural areas. Also, we suggest to establish a single multi-fund facility framework, simplify and harmonize rules across funds to enable real bottom-up innovation. The current framework limits impact. We have highlighted this here in the other working groups. Ensure pre-finance and bridge funding for LADS. Delays and cash flow gaps undermine continuity and discourage long-term innovation initiatives. LADS struggles many times between the funding periods, so we need to keep them there. We need to encourage them to have a long-term innovations plan and strategies. Also, to strengthen the role of cooperation, as I mentioned before, allocate a meaningful share of funding and technical support to LADS for cooperation, interterritorial and transnational, as in trigger new ideas and solutions. As we saw before, there are many good practice, there are many good projects which we can, through cooperation, to exchange very quickly innovation ideas. And also, I think we must ensure that rural proofing is constant at EU and national level. Assess the impact of the EU and national policy on rural innovation capacity ensure that support and not hinder local solution. That is very important. So I would like to close my recommendation with this. So we are going to continue raise our voice, and I hope someone listen us.
Thanks a lot, Argiro, and thanks you all for bringing up your own recommendation from the organizations and your members here today. I see that there are also a number of comments in the chat, such as other recommendations have been made, for instance, by the Rural PAC Coordination Group, and I believe then the next roundtable will be a way to explore some of them with a few of our speakers. But I keep as important messages that to build on those networks which are already acting on the ground and be sure that they are used as reinforced in order to build on the work which is already there. So I move back then to Seraphine for the next roundtable, and thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for the leadership of ERCA Prepare and ELARD. It was just mentioned, hope somebody will hear us. Well, I'm very pleased to have 3 decision makers from 3 institutions that are going to be in the coming months right in the middle of shaping and co-producing and co-legislating the next EU policies for local development in rural areas. I'm glad that they could join us a bit before the slot, so they could actually hear the final recommendations that we just been discussed. So therefore, I would like to invite Cristina Guarda, MEP, Lydia Pavlik-Rogosic, member of the European Economic and Social Committee, and Radim Sren, member of the Committee of the Regions, and also member of the Rural PAC Coordination Group. Glad that the 3 of you could make it. I appreciate it in particular because I know all of you have like a lot of things going on at the moment. For instance, if you see Radim, he is, I believe, speaking from the Grand Salon of Venice. So he actually had to step out of a meeting to join us. And I know both Cristina Guarda and Lydia had also other commitments, so much appreciated. I would like just to start with, given the time, straight with a question to Cristina Guarda. Cristina Guarda, those of you like me who go to Regi and Agri Committee, know she's a very active member from Italy in that committee. You have been, Cristina Guarda, a rapporteur recently on a very important report on the Agri Committee on strengthening rural areas in the EU through cohesion policy. So therefore, maybe you can also reflect on what has been discussed so far. I believe you've been hearing some of the recommendations. Whether you think cohesion policy provides sufficient support for rural innovation today, and any policy gaps and barriers you have identified through the process of drafting this recent report and other interventions you have gone. So we start with you, and then we go with Lydia and with Radim. So perhaps first, Cristina, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate to share also this last part of my experience for rural areas, because I was a regional council in Veneto region, in Venice in particular. So yes, I experienced as a farmer and as a local regional councillor the needs of these of the land I live. So it was very important for me to improve my activity also here in Europe. And in my view, cohesion policy still does not provide sufficient support to rural innovation today. The tools are there, for example, the possibility to fund smart solutions, community-led local development strategies, or synergies with sectorial programs, but too often they fail to reach the territories that are both most fragile and most innovative. Most of the funding for community-based innovation in rural areas still comes from the CAP, so the agricultural part, through the LEADER program. While cohesion funds have broader potential, they allocate only 750 million to community-led local development. And these approaches are often overlooked in national or regional operational programs. the main barriers are systemic and structural, and I tried to resume in 3 points. The first one is the excessive bureaucracy, the lack of prepared staff that discourages local communities and small actors, the lack of technical and financial resources to develop complex projects, and poor integration between sectoral and territorial policies, which often leaves rural innovation stuck in a limbo between agriculture, innovation, and industrial policies. So what we need is a deep shift of the paradigm. Rural innovation is not just about technology. We need to underline it 100 times because it's about participation. It's about local adaptation and social solution. Innovation can be addressed the systemic causes of problems. Innovation that can, that can address the systemic causes of problems can only emerge if we place people and communities at the heart of decision making, not only the engineering part, not only the strategy and the technology part. We need to start from people and then use and understand which kind of technology solution we can use. So this is my first answer, and thank you very much.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. So maybe we can complement now through, we'll move on to the European Social Committee. Again, I think Lydia Pavlik-Rokosic, those who are involved in local development, rural development, there's no presentation, but nevertheless, she's been a member of the Economic Social Committee since 2013, and she has actually developed a number of opinions on this topic, like the role of youth in rural development, a holistic strategy for sustainable development, and reports on the sustainable development, social development goals, among others. And she actually has been also founder of the Croatian Rural Network, a member of the official in the ministry. So brings a very extensive and multi-level perspective as well. So because also these various profiles and responsibilities also at European level, Lydia, as a professional with experience in public sector, civil society, national level, you have also, like Christina, can provide this multi-level perspective. What do you think, in your views, from your specific perspective, are the policy gaps and inconsistencies that should be addressed in terms of policies and to facilitate community-led and bottom-up dimensions of rural innovation? So without further ado, Lydia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I read the document that you sent, this summary of policy paper, and I agree with your findings and recommendation. Looking forward to read it in more details when it will be published. And of course, listening our colleagues from European networks, we heard already a lot of answers to this question that you pose to me. Yes, indeed, I come and represent here Economic and Social Committee, that is advisory body to the Commission, Council, and Parliament. So we don't have decision-making powers, but still we try to send some important messages that we, as representatives of employers, employees, and other civil society organization face in the field. So several points what we constantly warn of, and that's that innovation in rural areas often sits at the intersection of multiple policy domains, for example, agriculture, cohesion, digitalization, skills, research and innovation, and yet coordination between these remains limited. I think other speakers mentioned that as well. So we constantly highlight that fragmentation of rural policy and the need for holistic approaches towards a sustainable rural urban development and better integration across EU funds, and we prepared such opinion a few years ago. Also, as big supporters for LEADER and CLLD, we find out that funding is really insufficient, and we call for increased earmarking and simplified multi-fund approaches. Other speakers also mentioned that. We think that it's essential to establish dedicating funding lines that actively support civic, cultural, and service-based social innovation, and such initiatives play a crucial role in fostering sustainable, inclusive, and resilient rural communities and contribute to building social capital. And without social capital, there is no possibilities for collective actions. Also, technical capacity gaps at local level remain a major obstacle. All of speakers mentioned that, and that's why we recommended, in our opinion, strengthened support for training, advisory services, and long-term capacity buildings. And civil society organizations prove, and networks prove, that they have capacity and possibility to reach local rural communities. The ESC supports making rural proofing mandatory across all relevant policies to ensure a consistent bottom-up approach and avoid policy blind spots. And finally, EU and national funding often come with administrative complexity. All of us who implement projects are aware of this, and very often administrative work requires more time than actually we have for implementing projects. And those sometimes rigid priorities also exclude grassroots actors, especially small rural municipalities, cooperatives or local civil society organizations from these processes. So innovation at the local level is not just technological. That's what we have to have in mind. It includes social, organizational, and governance innovation, and current instruments don't sufficiently reflect this diversity. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate Radim. As you can see from this background, I believe you are in the Palace of the Dos in Venice. I feel great envy of you for, I think you're attending the NAT committee there in Venice. Radim, again, well-known person in this field. He's member of the European Committee of the Regions. He's been rapporteur for a number of landmark opinions on Smart Rural Europe, Future of Local Development, Territorial Agenda of the EU, and has been also responsible in ELARD in the past. He is Deputy Minister for Rural Development in the Czech Republic and is the chair of the EU Rural PAC Coordination Group. So definitely you bring a lot of perspective here, and perhaps to complement the views we have just had, I would like you to focus more on the aspect of local and regional government. Because local and regional authorities have a role in supporting rural innovation because they are closest to communities. They are not communities, they are the institutions that support communities. So from the point of view of local and regional government, what are your views in terms of the challenges and barriers hindering the ability to support rural innovation? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, perfect, yeah.
Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry because I'm in the heart of Venice, as you mentioned, and there is no good connection here. So just to reflect to your questions, we are just having a NAT commission meeting here. Just have been dealing with the vision on the food and agriculture. And so reading it, it's quite frustrating to see that there is just one page dedicated to non-agricultural development, because I think this is underestimated, and I am quite worried about the future of rural development and its place in the policies. With regard to the question you asked me, We have a lot of tools now and for innovations in the rural development. We have smart villages policy. We have ELARD. It was mentioned here by our colleague from the European Parliament that there is a possibility to use also regional fund for ELARD, but she mentioned 850 million euros. But out of that, 600 is used in the Czech Republic in one single member state, for ELARD. So it means that this is a tool which is not used. In fact, it's used by just by one member state extensively and just a little by other member states. And it's
Yes, back in. Yeah. Radim?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. It seems to me sometimes that we are looking for barriers and obstacles and not for the bridges, and the solutions. And I think this is crucial to use the tools we do have already and to use them for the innovations in rural areas. Because I think there are huge challenges. We have security issues. We have energy security issues. We have, although the demography challenges. And on the other hand, we have also technologies, we can use, and also social innovations. So I think if we use all those instruments, we are able to face the challenges and to use it as an advantage for the transformation of rural areas. And I think the only thing we don't have is a will. Is a will usually mostly of the member states to use the tools, but also a will of the European Union Commission to be more strict in pushing the need to use those. Because if we pushed to use the reforms in RRF, if we are forced to deliver results in different programs, I think we need also to be more pushed by this. And especially being a Deputy Minister of Regional Development, speaking to my colleagues from different member states, it's always quite tricky because they see all the problems and obstacles, for example, to use ELARD, smart villages, and they are not looking for solutions. And I think we need to push more. And also as a Rural Pact coordination group, we are trying to do that, to really push to have a common strong voice and to start to think in a different way. I was in a congress in Poznan, of the future of rural development as a part of Polish presidency. And it was equation between agriculture and rural development. It was really, I can confirm, very few things which were going outside of just agriculture. So we need to keep out of this approach to rural development, and we need so that it's part of also cohesion policy. We had talks on that last week in Cotter Commission. There was a rapporteur from the European Parliament who is now having a report, rural development as a part of cohesion policy. As a first sentence, he said, "Oh, it's a very sensitive issue in the European Parliament." Why sensitive issue? Because, if you want true cohesion, it doesn't depend what kind of region it is, So that's the situation how it is, and we have to fight it.
Thank you. I think that's bearing of your tolerance because it's slightly delayed. I'd like to make a final round of comment recommendations. So naturally, moving from Radim's point, maybe to Cristina Guarde, if she can hear us. Whether, what in your view in terms of your recommendations, given you are in a unique position, you are in the middle of the Agri Committee, Regi Committee, two different committees, overlapping responsibilities, different logic sometimes. How do you see in terms of policy recommendations based on the work you've been carrying out could address a more integrated approach between cohesion policy and rural development? And actually, across EU policies, perhaps more integrated than we have at the moment. What are the advantages, perhaps also the risks of having an integrated approach? Maybe the floor is yours, Cristina. Thank you.
Thank you again. And I wanted to thank you also, Radim and Lydia, for their speeches because I felt them on board. So thank you very much. It's a very complicated theme at the moment, since also I'm the shadow rapporteur for the Greens for the revision of the midterm revision of cohesion policy, and the proposal of the Commission. It's really hard to approach, and I will explain in a minute why. In the next programming period, cohesion policy can and must do much more to promote transformative rural innovation. This requires an integrated vision and some fundamental changes. And I would say, by start, that we need to make sure that cohesion policy itself still exists, and isn't diverted to finance so-called new priorities, like we are seeing in the revision now, like defense, big enterprises, which in my view have very little to do with strengthening rural areas and helping who really needs to be helped in this particular moment, also in the geopolitical difficulties that we are in. First, we need to overcome this the sectoral approach. Rural areas are complex systems. Innovation can come from renewable energy, shared mobility, circular economy, or community-based car services. We need integrated governance between industrial, climate, digital, and social policy, and stronger mechanism for rural proofing across all EU policies. This must be combined with earmarked funds specifically for rural territories. We need to create specifically for these territories. Second, we need a genuine, I will call genuine, European strategy for community-led rural innovation, with clear objectives, dedicated measures, and fully funded support for local initiatives. Also outside the CAP framework, the principle of the right to stay in rural territories, the right to live, work, and innovate where you are, must become a compass for public action, not only for the CAP. Third, we must strengthen local capacity. Too many EU funds remain out of the reach for community due to lack technical resources, administrative complexity, or rules designed for large-scale beneficiaries. It is essential to provide 100% technical assistance, promote flexible instruments, and create small-scale calls dedicated to collective projects, so people can feel involved and can have the possibility to be involved directly. At the same time, we need a minimum share for the CLLD, as we have for the leader. Finally, coherence with the CAP must be based on complementary, which is different from a single fund managed at national level. So we need to fight for the integration and to create funds that are complementary and not a fusion in a single fund managed at the national level. The CAP plays a key role in supporting farmers, but cohesion policy, as you said before, is what can enable broader territorial innovation, engaging non-agricultural communities, facilitating synergies between diverse actors, and enabling local experimentation. So a single fund is not the answer, but better complementary definitely is. The innovation we want is not imposed from above. It must emerge from the ground up. And that's where cohesion policy must invest more, invest better, and invest in a more inclusive way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lydia, maybe some recommendation from the point of view of DEC, the social sector, in terms of making policies more smarter, more participative, maybe perhaps also any ideas, recommendation in terms of rural proofing, how to make these policies actually policies sensitive to the rural areas. So maybe some strategic recommendation from your side to conclude, Lydia.
Thank you, Serafin. I'm glad that Christina mentioned all of these issues that are also important for our committee, and I hope that more her colleagues in the parliament are on the same track. I know that Radim and I share always similar thoughts, and yes, what he mentioned in Poznan, the focus was agriculture, really not so much on rural development and development of communities. So in our view, innovation in rural areas must be seen as strategic EU investment, not just the cost. And the next MFF must secure ambitious funding for rural development, cohesion policy and dedicated rural innovation program. We also have fear for direction of cohesion policy towards more funds or funds for defense, because we think it might be bring not more balance but less balance development, which is against the cohesion policy purpose. Yes, funding must go beyond agriculture to support multi-sector innovation, including energy, for example, community energy projects, digital services, mobility and connectivity is really really important when we, for example, talking of affordable housing. If it's built in peri-urban areas without affordable and accessible mobility, doesn't mean anything. So also in care, education and circular economy, social economy models that should be rooted in the local realities. We already mentioned need to simplify access to funding and reinforce capacity building. Even when funds are available, rural actors often face barriers in applying for and managing that. That's also what we mentioned. So we always stress the need for technical assistance, peer learning and long-term local capacity building, especially through Rural Pact, what Radim mentioned, and networks, and national CAP networks, but also we should not forget support national CSOs, civil society organization in rural areas and leader networks, and Vanessa mentioned importance of intermediary organizations as well. When we come to rural proofing, it must go beyond being a rhetorical principle as it is now. It needs to become a mandatory ex-ante assessment tool in the design of EU, but also national policies, especially under the new MFF. This means systematically evaluating the rural impact of all major policies and investments, ensuring that they do not exclude or disadvantage rural communities. I have experience with the bylaw on better regulation in Croatia. They didn't mention rural proofing at all or youth test. So I, during the consultation, I intervened and they replied that they will put it in the next round. So it will not be mandatory now. Of course, bottom-up innovation needs structure spaces for participation. That was stressed by several speakers. Many rural areas lack functioning local or regional governments platforms where communities, public authorities, businesses and civil society can jointly design and implement solutions. EU policy still too often treats rural communities as recipients rather than co-creators. What happened with LAGs in many countries? Of course, they have this function, but many ministries see them as a prolonged hands to implement grant scheme, and this role of organizers and mobilizers of community is somehow lost in many areas. And we didn't talk much, at least until I'm listening the webinar, about long-term vision for rural areas, and it should serve as a strategic compass. The vision provides an integrated framework to guide investments in smarter, stronger and more connected rural areas, and our committee urges the next commissions to treat the vision as political priority. society. Also, of course, linked to budgetary choices and backed by governance mechanisms involving local and regional stakeholders, especially through the Rural Pact. And finally, we need to enhance rural development framework. The vision for agriculture recognizes the need to update the EU Rural Action Plan, and our committee is committed to the Rural Pact and the implementation of the long-term vision for rural areas. And actually, we've gone even further. We advocate for a dedicated post-2027 rural development policy with sufficient funding and multi-level governance structures. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we give the floor to the AEIDL president to close the event, just perhaps the final comments from Radim. Radim is being, as chair of the Rural Park Coordinating Group, has been a co-author or leading author of a rather strong declaration on the future of rural areas in Europe. Also from the point of view perspective of the Committee of the Regions, strong calls against centralization or undue centralization and in favor of the partnership principle. So my question for him, and it's a difficult question to answer in a short minute, but under which conditions do you think these new single national plans can actually take place without undermining the principle of multi-level governance, territorial cohesion, and the partnership principle? Not an easy question to finish, but maybe you can answer. Radim, the floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, thanks to all the speakers, because I think we all agree. When I'm speaking to my colleagues in the Committee of Regions, we all agree. When I'm at the Council of Ministers, we all agree. So I don't know why nobody is listening to us. It seems to me that all the policies now are being prepared somewhere in the ivory tower of the Commission, of the cabinet of Ursula von der Leyen. And if something leaks out, we are just thinking, and I know that even the colleagues in the European Parliament do not have much more information that we all do have, And this is exactly the example how we shouldn't do the policies, in the member states. There should be partnership principle, code of conduct, everything. And something which is prepared, which is crucial for the future, not just rural areas, but of Europe, is done secretly somewhere. So we see that there is single fund, and okay, it's too much, then there is a single plan. Now it's called single partnership plan, or I don't know. So they are trying to move it, but nobody knows how it will look like, if it is like RR mechanism or how whatever it looks like. And also now the reallocation, the midterm, it's also very dangerous because, the money which are not spent should go for security and those centralized issues. And, taking the money from the regions and local governments. And of course, with the reallocation negotiation, I'm afraid that the partnership principle and subsidiarity will be weakened, On the other hand, we are all the time saying that we should make tailor-made solutions on the local level, that no solutions fits for all, we should use place-based approaches, integrated approaches like Leader Saldi. So, according to my opinion, maybe it's not about if it's called single, double, triple, or partnership plan, I cannot imagine that in Germany or Italy it can work, that Bavaria, Quebec, Saxony will have one plan, So that's a little bit ridiculous. But, what I feel, in case this is the scenario, and we know that it will be different from how it looked like in this moment, so that we need to put the obligatory ring fencing for place-based approaches within those plans. That's how we are thinking about it in the Czech Republic while preparing it, that we can say, okay, 20, 30, 40% will be used through the place-based territorial tools like CLLD, ITI, cross-border cooperation, just transition mechanism. So this is the way. But I am not sure that European Union will give this as a compulsory ring fencing. And then it's up to the member states. And of course, it's a danger in many member states that it will be really centralized. And I would like to stress out that the principles of subsidiarity and partnership and also a cohesion, true cohesion of the weaker regions to the stronger regions is the glue of the European integration. And if we do not follow this, we are just not obeying the main principles why the European integration was done and created. And I am really afraid about it. So I think we all need to try all the time that really we need to focus. And it was mentioned also the rural proofing, it's just a proclamation. Also, the long-term vision for rural areas is a proclamation. In case we don't have any indicators, any evidence-based policies, we just follow, the things. And we have territorial impact assessment. So why not to use this mechanism also for rural proofing? It's just a proclamation all the time. We need to do something with that, because it would be a real danger. And I'm really afraid that there won't be any space for rural development in the future policies. Because I met the commissioners Hunt and Cabinet last week. They said, okay, it will be part of cohesion policy. Cohesion policy said, okay, it will be part of agriculture policy. All of them say, we have leader, it's amazing. I say, okay, so give the leader bigger space, but 10 times more money, not just the allocation as they have to solve the solutions. And, and finally, it would, at the end of the day, rural development, non-agricultural development would not be included anywhere, So that's something which is I am afraid of, and we need to really fight for that. And thanks also to the colleague from the European Parliament having the same actually opinion as we all do have, and we need to really to join the forces and also to make the process of the preparation of the future period transparent and with partnership principle, not just being something designed in the ivory tower of Brussels. This won't work. We know it. People from the regions, and we need to be included in this debate.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Radim. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for your availability. Still a lot of things to be fought and to be discussed and negotiated in the coming months once the MFF is tabled. So thank you very much. Before thank you very much. Before I say give the floor to our president to say some farewell. Thank for those of you staying on until the speed of a delay, because we wanted to make sure that everybody could speak. Also, we take note of all the meeting notes because we're going to be useful for the study we are doing. I mean, the feedback we are getting. The problem when you pack too many speakers is that you don't have less space for discussion. So thank you for all the written input we received. I see also in the comments that some people said that we should organize a meeting like this every week. I think perhaps it's too much, but it's just about. Because if you're a member of FUTURAL, if you subscribe to this meeting, you will be getting further FUTURAL ELIF Innovation Forum meetings. But also, if you subscribe to the European Local Innovation Forum, you will get a lot of other events on local development that we do through the half a dozen projects on rural innovation that we are part of. And you will actually be able to participate and interact. So this is not just, this is the third I do this week, but normally it's not that often, but there will be other opportunities. You can register there. You will get this and all other events that we are organizing as AEDL and the various projects we are part of. We will also get like a satisfaction survey that will be launched as soon as Marta, our president, speaks. And therefore, thank you for the engaging discussion. And now we move on to perhaps our president, Marta, can reflect a bit on what we discussed today before closing. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Serafin. I'm not sure you see me.
No, but we hear you well, though.
You see me because I don't see myself. Okay, so first, a very short personal comment from the idea strategy to this event. When we talk about Europe and European people, it's not just about the European Union. And I was glad to hear some comments related to this. And after this personal comment, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. Special thanks to all the speakers for their contributions. And let me thank the AEIDL team and FUTURAL team for their preparatory work and moderation. I hope everyone benefited from this meeting, and I'm sure we will continue. I think we all agree that the key of good rural policies and programs is to go to people and hear their voice. I think it's so simple. So we should work with this. And the European project and people need our commitment, and it's our very urgent mission to convince others, because there is a circle of people who fully agree with each other, and we hear the same words from each other for years. But this is a key moment now to extend this circle as much as possible. So this is our mission, as I feel. Thank you again, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to launch a satisfaction poll. If you can actually fill it before you leave, that will be great, because that will help us make sure that the Commission gets the right reporting about the level of engagement we had about this meeting. So please, before you go, you could just reply in this poll just being launched. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and for those of you who already answered, see you soon. We will have organized a number of related events in the coming weeks and months, and in the interesting time we're going to have. Thank you to all the speakers for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.